Putin Bad News 35 people were killed in an explosion and fire at a gas station in Dagestan, Russia. An explosion at a gas station in Russia's far-flung Caucasus Republic of Dagestan killed at least 35 people and injured 64 others. Several vehicles were destroyed by the explosion's resulting fireball, and rescue workers were left to put out the flames and remove the wreckage. President Vladimir Putin has issued a statement expressing his condolences to the victims' families and friends and wishing a speedy recovery to those who were injured. The initial number of injured reported by authorities was 80, but this was later revised downward. After a fire broke out at a gas station in Makhachkala, an explosion occurred. The investigation board concluded that the explosion was caused by a fire that began in the building housing a car maintenance service and spread to a nearby room housing flammable fertilizer. Criminal proceedings have been initiated due to the provision of unsafe services. The fire, according to state-run media, has been put out. Dagestan's capital, Makhachkala, sits on the shores of the Caspian Sea. After the explosion, everything fell on top of them, and they couldn't see a thing, according to eyewitnesses. Firefighters could be seen attempting to put out the blaze on camera, and rescue workers could be seen inspecting the rubble of a building. About 600 square meters were destroyed, and 260 firefighters were called in to put out the blaze. The critically injured were flown to Moscow on a government plane equipped with medical supplies. The Dagestani government declared August 15 a day of mourning, and all public flags were lowered to half-staff and all scheduled performances were scrapped. Embroiled in a protracted civil war that threatens to destabilize the region, the Sudanese Army and the Paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, RSF, have devastated the capital Khartoum and sparked ethnically driven attacks in Darfur. A Georgia court has confirmed the publication of a Trump document online. On Tuesday, the clerk of the Fulton County, Georgia court acknowledged the release on the court's website of a document about former President Donald Trump being criminally charged, as reported by Reuters on Monday. While Russia and the United States have called for a peaceful resolution, the junta in Niger said on Tuesday that it is open to talks to resolve a regional crisis caused by last month's military coup. Military leaders have refused Western powers and democratic African governments' requests to release detained President Mohamed Bazoum, who they have held since the coup on July 26. Russia launches an air assault on western Ukraine, far from the front lines. 3 people were killed and more than a dozen were injured on Tuesday when Russian airstrikes hit a factory in 2 western regions of Ukraine bordering NATO member Poland and other areas, according to Ukrainian officials. It was the largest air assault on the Lviv region since the Russian invasion in February 2022, according to local media. An ex-FBI agent has admitted to working illegally for a Russian oligarch, despite U.S. sanctions against the latter. On Tuesday in a New York court, a former FBI agent pleaded guilty to 1 count of conspiracy in exchange for prosecutors dropping other charges related to his work for Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska while he was under U.S. sanctions. Former New York field office head of the FBI Charles McGonigal was accused by prosecutors in January of receiving undisclosed payments from Deripaska in exchange for investigating a rival businessman and unsuccessfully lobbying in 2019 to have Deripaska's sanctions lifted. McGonigal retired from the FBI in 2018. The situation in Sudan is spiraling out of control, according to the United Nations. The United Nations warned on Tuesday that after 4 months of war, people inside Sudan are running out of food and dying from a lack of healthcare. More than 1 million people have fled to neighboring states. Embroiled in a protracted civil war that threatens to destabilize the region, the Sudanese Army and the Paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, RSF, have devastated the capital Khartoum and sparked ethnically driven attacks in Darfur. A Georgia court has confirmed the publication of a Trump document online. On Tuesday, the clerk of the Fulton County, Georgia court acknowledged the release on the court's website of a document about former President Donald Trump being criminally charged, as reported by Reuters on Monday. The grand jury will vote later in the day on whether or not to indict Trump on charges of trying to overturn his election loss, and the court clerk has released a statement saying the system is currently being tested. Peña sworn in as president of Paraguay. Taiwan's vice president presents. On Tuesday, Santiago Peña was sworn in as the new president of Paraguay, following his election victory in April. Peña has pledged to build alliances and demonstrate firm and ethical leadership during his 5-year term. In a solemn ceremony witnessed by South American leaders, the King of Spain, and Taiwan's Vice President William Lai, Peña took the oath of office as president outside of Asunción's government palace. The self-governing island is claimed by China, but Paraguay is one of the few countries that maintains formal diplomatic ties with its government. In a case of alleged election subversion, Georgia has charged Trump with racketeering. On Tuesday, a Georgia grand jury indicted Donald Trump on multiple felony charges for allegedly attempting to reverse his loss in the 2020 presidential election by using a law intended to combat criminal organizations. Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis filed the charges late on Monday, naming 2024 Republican frontrunner Donald Trump and 18 others in an alleged plot to overturn Trump's loss to Democrat Joe Biden. A UN envoy has urged the International Criminal Court to investigate and prosecute cases of gender discrimination in Afghanistan. UN Education Envoy Gordon Brown said on Tuesday that gender discrimination in Afghanistan should be investigated by the International Criminal Court, ICC, as a possible crime against humanity. On the second anniversary of the Taliban's return to power, Brown said he had written to ICC prosecutor Karim Khan to argue his point. This followed the withdrawal of U.S.-led forces after 20 years of war. The United States would applaud any effort by Iran to reduce its nuclear program. The U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, said on Tuesday that he could not confirm a report that Iran slowed the pace of amassing near-weapons-grade enriched uranium, but that the U.S. would welcome any steps Iran took to de-escalate its growing nuclear threat. Blinken also told reporters that the Iranian decision to release American prisoners into house arrest had nothing to do with the United States' overall policy toward Iran, which he said was based on deterrence, pressure, and diplomacy. North Korea claims that King Travis is seeking asylum in their country due to racism and mistreatment. Pyongyang's first public acknowledgement of King's crossing from South Korea on July 18 came from state media on Wednesday, when they reported that North Korea had concluded that King wanted refuge there or elsewhere because of inhuman maltreatment and racial discrimination in the U.S. and the military. During a civilian tour of the Joint Security Area, JSA, on the heavily fortified border between the two Koreas, King, a private in the United States Army, made a break for the North.